Welcome to a first look at Cinedeck 2.0. The original Cinedeck UI was designed for use in close quarters, like a helicopter or OB van, where large touchscreen controls and displays with maximum information density made sense. But with increasingly IP-based workflows, we wanted to take the opportunity to rethink the Cinedeck UI. Cinedeck 2.0 is a modern, multi-platform mouse-driven UI with extensive control over how much information is displayed and full user customization either by need or by preference of both the look and function of the software. With Cinedeck 2.0, a user is no longer constrained to controlling a Cinedeck directly because Cinedeck 2.0 runs as a client on any system and allows control of local or remote Cinedeck hardware. This means you can now, for example, directly control multiple remote Cinedecks from a single interface, even on a laptop. The new multi-user functionality allows everyone to view footage as it comes in, with different levels of control. So when viewing inputs, for example, operators can have just the displays relevant to recording, while admins can have access to recording parameters, and guest users, such as producers, can strip down the UI to just the information they need. Any number of record or playback channels can be controlled from a single instance of the UI. Although with a practical limit on screen real estate, 24 channels is probably the reasonable maximum. Here we see the 4 inputs from the Cinedeck have been routed to the Cinedeck 2.0 client. But as I mentioned before, the client software doesn't have to be running on Cinedeck hardware as it is here. It could be running on any system as long as the Cinedeck hardware is accessible over a network. Now at the moment, all information related to the recording is turned on, including input sources, naming, record parameters, and record controls. But it's easy to selectively hide all unneeded information and show only what is required for the job at hand. In this example, which I would call the recordist view, we close all displays except for the global record controls and previews, and leave the audio meters enabled in the previews. And as you see here, each information type can also be locked while still visible to prevent accidental changes. Let's take a look at the new UI in a little greater detail. First, let's quickly run through the installation process. Now, as with any program, Cinedeck 2.0 is installed through an installer, a DMG or package file on a Mac, or MSI on Windows. Now, when installing the software, keep in mind that the client version should always match the server version on any systems that you plan on connecting to. When opening Cinedeck 2.0, we always start at the login screen. Listed here are the different user accounts. These accounts have editable permissions to restrict the kind of changes each type of user is allowed to make. Each user can have a password set by the super user, although they're not required. And the user can only make changes that are enabled for their specific user. Once logged in, we see only a default preset with no configured inputs. The first thing we need to do is configure some inputs. So we open the Input Sources Setup view and click the plus to add a source machine. As I type the IP address of the ZX, its name is auto-discovered on the network as well as its status. Once the Cinedeck IP addresses are entered, we can choose which inputs on those Cinedecks will appear in our input sources list. Each available input is automatically populated in the Input ID pulldown, and we can add as many decks as we like and any number of inputs on those decks. Here I've added 4 inputs from the ZX server running on this machine, and we can rename them to better match the actual source. So we could call them, for example, Cam A or Audience RF01. Here I've mapped the inputs to match the server, with the 4 inputs on the deck mapped to the 4 inputs in the software. But I could just as easily add 1 input from 10 different decks on the network. Back in the main UI, we now see the inputs we added listed on the right side, and adding an input to a preview channel is just a drag and drop. Assigning a preset to an input is also just a drag and drop, as we see here. Presets can be shared across any number of inputs, so that things like input settings and naming, for example, can be consistent between inputs, regardless of which physical deck they're on. Here we can edit the preset settings for everything except file naming, which is handled in its own submenu. Available input types, audio types, codecs, wrappers, write destinations, and other settings are all directly editable. Each encoder can have multiple record destinations for redundancy, and in general, each input can have 2 or more encoders, allowing for simultaneous creation of a master and proxy. Although not available in this release, a future release will allow for direct upload to platforms such as YouTube or Vimeo, as well as direct streaming to social media. Many settings such as audio routing may be edited on an input-specific basis, but also have a selection to apply these settings across all inputs that share a preset. File naming is easy to manage using drag and drop elements, but can be as complex as necessary to support nearly any naming convention. The same elements can be used in record paths, and many variables are customizable. These variables, as well as user-entered values, can also be used to feed XML generation for MAM ingest. A powerful tool for live recordings with on-the-fly name change requirements is our Lists tool. Lists can be pre-populated with cast names, shot types, feed names, etc., and then updated on the fly for the current need. An example of this is Sesame Street, where each shot needs to be labeled with the Muppet or Muppets, cast characters, guest stars, and shot type. Changes that can be made in the seconds available between shots by simply clicking on the list parameters. Now let's record for a bit. As we see, once in record, the UI overlays as well as optional output overlays make it very clear we're recording. When the record stops, the output overlays also make it very clear that the recording has stopped. Now that we've recorded a file, the play button is added to the overlay controls. Clicking it opens the most recently recorded file for gate check. Playback is also supported for any file on storage that the deck has access to. At the bottom, we have group creation, allowing simultaneous control of multiple channels. Groups of channels can be made on the fly by simply selecting 2 or more channels, or they can be saved and recalled by creating a selection group so that preset groups of channels can be gang controlled for record and playback. You can save a selection group by simply selecting multiple channels while holding Shift and clicking the plus button. This will create a preset channel group that can be recalled later on for group control. Recordings can be scheduled using the scheduling pane by simply setting an input or group of inputs, an interval, date, and time. And conflict checking is supported, so you don't have to worry about recording conflicts. When moving between projects, settings, including presets and users, can be moved from one system to another by simply exporting from the older machine and importing on the new machine. I'll stop here, but I think you'll agree that the new UI is a great update to the Cinedeck user experience, and we look forward to seeing how you use it. Thanks for joining us.